Hey folks, welcome to Thinking Theology. You saw the title. I'm kind of doing something different today. The name of the channel is Thinking Theology. And so I don't know where this is going to go when I analyze this and see what George has to say specifically. I'm just going to put my headphones on and then I'm going to give my comments along the way. All right, so here we go with George Carlin's stand-up routine. Religion is bullshit.
But in the bullshit department, a businessman can't hold a candle to a clergyman. Because I got to tell you the truth, folks. I got to tell you the truth. When it comes to bullshit, big time, major league bullshit, you have to stand in awe of the all-time champion of false promises and exaggerated claims, religion. No contest. No contest.
All right, I'm going to pause already. One, George isn't a big fan of the businessman either because he wasn't a big fan of advertising. I don't think people are different regardless of what realm they're in. I don't care if they're involved in the religious realm, if they're a rabbi, a priest, or if someone's in business or if someone's a school teacher. I think human nature is human nature. And we all deal with the same stuff. There are priests who lie, rabbis who lie, cheat, and all that. There are businessmen and women who do that. And there are very good people in both of those and are in all of these realms too. So catch anybody in a bad day and you're going to get some of what he's talking about. I do understand the exaggerated claims. There are certainly a lot of those. I mean, I could look in the prosperity gospel, for example, within some Christian circles where God wants you to prosper no matter what. And I mean, if you're a fan of the biblical texts, you could see that anytime somebody got close to God, they might have gotten beheaded. They certainly had a rough life. Life was harder. So the prosperity gospel doesn't work. So I understand George from that standpoint, even though he didn't point it out. Anyway.
Religion easily has the greatest bullshit story ever told. Think about it. Religion has actually convinced people that there's an invisible man living in the sky who watches everything you do every minute of every day. And the invisible man has a special list of 10 things he does not want you to do. And if you do any of these 10 things, he has a special place.
No. That isn't what... I mean, the 10 Commandments, we've glorified the 10 Commandments, and that's a good thing. I mean, these are some really good things. Many systems of law are based on not killing, stealing, this kind of thing. But there are I think there are 600 something in the Hebrew Bible. There are over 600 commandments there, dietary, relational, this kind of thing. And then with the New Testament, for example, which in many ways is a replacement theology, which I'm not a fan of. I don't agree with that part of it, but that like Jesus paid for your sins, all right? This is that. Christianity basically says that. So it doesn't have to do with observing these 10 commandments. But anyway, let's see where Georgie goes.
Full of fire and smoke and burning and torture and anguish, where he will send you to live and suffer and burn and choke and scream and cry forever and ever till the end of time. But he loves you.
He's spot on about that. That is a dilemma that's plagued people for a long time. How is it that this God that's posited as love has this place where you're just tormented forever, called hell? And a funny notion about hell, which I do not believe that there is such a place, do what you will with that. And I have biblical reasons for it and non-biblical ones. But this is a good argument that when something is put in a place of fire, it burns up. It runs out of fuel. You need 3 things for fire. You need heat, fuel, and oxygen. And unless God rewrites the rules, unless the rules are rewritten somehow, the fuel, even if you're the human fuel, which is a very scary notion, eventually there'd be nothing left of you and you'd be burned up. So you couldn't be burning forever. That notion just doesn't work. But George's point is one that's very well taken, that this God, anybody who's love that would conceptualize something like that those two ideas don't go together. So one's got to give. Either God's not loved the way we think, or hell doesn't exist. That was just a human tactic to get people to comply with some sense of ethics, morals, or law, be law-abiding and behavior, behavioral issues.
He loves you. He loves you and he needs money. He always needs money. He's all powerful, all perfect, all knowing, and all wise. Somehow, just can't handle money.
No, that's not. He's attributing to God what goes on with people. People need money. We need money to live in this world. God wouldn't need money. Our concept of God isn't that he needs money, but he's attributing to God what goes on with people. All right, here we go.
Religion takes in billions of dollars, they pay no taxes, and they always need a little more. Now, you talk about a good bullshit story. Holy shit.
His cynicism is off the charts. And I don't even agree with all this. But yeah, I mean, charities do take in money and there's an incentive to give. So there's one aspect of religious organizations that is absolutely wonderful. Like, it encourages people to give. And if they do good things with it, you've got your St. Jude's hospitals, you've got your Jewish charity, you name it. There's a lot of good that's being done for the homeless and so forth with the money. I don't know all the details of it, but to say that they don't pay taxes on it, that's fine. The government shouldn't have their hand in every single monetary transaction that takes place. But all right, let's see where else we go with Georgie.
Thank you. But, thank you. Thank you very much. But I want you to know something. This is sincere. I want you to know, when it comes to believing in God, I really tried. I really tried. I tried to believe that there is a God who created each of us in his own image and likeness, loves us very much, and keeps a close eye on things. I really tried to believe that, but I gotta tell you, the longer you live, the more you look around, the more you realize something is fucked up. Something is wrong here. War, disease.
This is true, but it's also true, though, George actually had not merely a religious upbringing, but my recollection, along the lines of Sam Kinison. Sam Kinison was like in seminary. He was very religious, but then certain things no longer made sense to him. Same thing with George, but as I understand it, George wasn't just like somebody trying randomly. I think he was religious or spiritual, or however you want to word it, like purposely so for quite a while. And then he's going to continue here, though.
Death, destruction, hunger, filth, poverty, torture, crime, corruption, and the ice capades. Something is definitely wrong. This is not good work. If this is the best God can do, I am not impressed. Results like these do not belong on the resume of a supreme being. This is the kind of shit you'd expect from an office temp with a bad attitude. And just between you and me, in any decently run universe, this guy would have been out on his all-powerful ass a long time ago. And by the way, I say this guy because I firmly believe, looking at these results, that if there is a God, it has to be a man. No woman could or would ever fuck things up like this.
That is not true. I've lived long enough to know, and women know too. They know how much, generally speaking, how confused they are, how angry they get. And so in this regard, no. As far as male, female, I couldn't care less. God's male, female, neutral. God is spirit, so whether male or female, the Bible represents God as a male, and so fine. For convenience sake, go there. And so absolutely women are as capable as men of screwing things up. No question about it. And it starts young. Women are brutal on other women, especially, or females are brutal with other females. Anyway, so let's go back to it.
So, if there is a God, if there is, I think most reasonable people might agree that he's at least incompetent and maybe, just maybe, doesn't give a shit. Doesn't give a shit, which I admire in a person and which would explain a lot of these bad results. So rather than be just another mindless religious robot, mindlessly and aimlessly and blindly believing that all of this is in the hands of some spooky, incompetent father figure who doesn't give a shit, I decided to look around for something else to worship, something I could really count on. And immediately, I thought of the sun. Happened like that. Overnight, I became a sun worshiper. Well, not overnight. You can't see the sun at night. But first thing the next morning, I became a sun worshiper. Several reasons.
Well, yeah, I got to stop for a second. Because what did you say before this about God either being incompetent or doesn't care, couldn't care less? That stems from the notion that God is in control of everything. And that's basically what George is talking about without saying it like that. And I do not agree and haven't agreed that God is in control of everything. That stands against free will. There are many philosophical arguments designed to sort of bring the idea of how free will could exist in a world in which God is in control and everything is happening because he's basically commanding it or orchestrating it. God stands outside time just because he knows what's going to happen in the future. This is another one. He's all-knowing. He knows what's going to happen in the future. That doesn't mean we're not free to make our choices. He just knows all these different arguments that, God can put this together. But what he's speaking about is God being in control. And my personal take is that God is not in control. I don't know why the universe is as big as it is, for example, and why we're so tiny. I get his point, though. There's so much that's wrong that we do to one another in this world between war and just mean-spiritedness or lying or whatever you call it. And he's just speaking to what he's seeing. And if God was in control and God is love, how is this stuff happening? And this isn't a new thing that George is pointing out. This has been, Time magazine actually did an article on this about 30-some years ago, The Theologian's Dilemma. God is love, horrible things happen, the theologian's dilemma. Something like that, as I recall.
First of all, I can see the sun, okay? Yeah. Unlike some other gods I could mention, I can actually see the sun. I'm big on that. If I can see something, I don't know, kind of helps the credibility along, So every day I can see the sun as it gives me everything I need: heat, light, food, flowers in the park, reflections on the lake, an occasional skin cancer. But hey, at least there are no crucifixions, and we're not setting people on fire simply because they don't agree with us. Sun worship is fairly simple. There's no mystery, no miracles, no pageantry, no one asks for money, there are no songs to learn, and we don't have a special building where we all gather once a week to compare clothing. And the best thing about the sun, it never tells me I'm unworthy. Doesn't tell me I'm a bad person who needs to be saved. Hasn't said an unkind word. Treats me fine.
Not really. Not negatively, I get it. Okay, it hasn't said anything nice. He likes the good things that the sun does, but the sun also hasn't said anything favorable to him. But maybe he doesn't need that. Fair enough.
So I worship the sun, but I don't pray to the sun. Know why? I wouldn't presume on our friendship. It's not polite. I've often thought people treat God rather rudely, don't you? Asking trillions and trillions of prayers every day, asking and pleading and begging for favors. Do this, give me that, I need a new car, I want a better job. And most of this praying takes place on Sunday, his day off. It's not...
Depends. Shabbat is Saturday. Christians moved it over a day. But, I get the point. Now he seems to be a fan of God because he's going into protection mode, in a sense, of God. So it's kind of funny where he went from God being the bad guy. People really were the bad guy, but let's see where he goes.
Nice. And it's no way to treat a friend. But people do pray, and they pray for a lot of different things. You know, your sister needs an operation on her crotch. Your brother was arrested for defecating in a mall. But most of all, you'd really like to fuck that hot little redhead down at the convenience store. You know, the one with the eye patch and the club foot, huh? Can you pray for that? I think you'd have to. And I...
Why would it say somebody wants to bang a hot one, but she's got like a club foot and something else is wrong with her? And then he's like, you'd have to pray to want to get with that. So that's self-defeating, but whatever. This is George.
Say, fine, pray for anything you want. Pray for anything. But what about the divine plan? Remember that? The divine plan. Long time ago, God made a divine plan. Gave it a lot of thought, decided it was a good plan, put it into practice. And for billions and billions of years, the divine plan has been doing just fine. Now you come along and pray for something. Well, suppose the thing you want isn't in God's divine plan. What do you want him to do? Change his plan? Just for you? Doesn't it seem a little arrogant? It's a divine plan.
There's a good logic to this right here. Remember, thinking theology. Like, how are arguments being structured? Where are the deficiencies in them? And there are a number in what George is saying. There's a very big one, but which I'll talk about in the end if I remember. But yeah, this makes complete sense right here.
Man, what's the use of being God if every rundown schmuck with a $2 prayer book can come along and fuck up your plan? And here's something else, another problem you might have. Suppose your prayers aren't answered. What do you say? Well, it's God's will. Thy will be done. Fine, but if it's God's will and he's going to do what he wants to anyway, why the fuck bother praying in the first place? Seems like a big waste of time to me. Couldn't you just skip the praying part and go right to his will? It's all very confusing. So to get around a lot of this, I decided to worship the sun. But as I said, I don't pray to the sun. You know who I pray to? Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci. Two reasons. First of all, I think he's...
I just watched My Cousin Vinny yesterday for like the 20th time. It's like the best movie, one of the best movies ever. But Joe Pesci and Marissa Tomei, I still have a major crush on Marissa Tomei. But Joe, I love them in the Die Hard movies. The dude, what was he in? He was in Scarface. Anyway, let's hear what George says.
A good actor, okay? To me, that counts. Second, he looks like a guy who can get things done. Joe Pesci doesn't fuck around. Doesn't fuck around. In fact, Joe Pesci came through on a couple of things that God was having trouble with. For years, I asked God to do something about my noisy neighbor with the barking dog. Joe Pesci straightened that cocksucker out with one visit. It's amazing what you can accomplish with a simple baseball bat. So I've been praying to Joe for about a year now. And I noticed something. I noticed that all the prayers I used to offer to God and all the prayers I now offer to Joe Pesci are being answered at about the same 50% rate. Half the time I get what I want, half the time I don't. Same as God.
All right, I got to pause there. I did this, and this really concerned my friends for a while, but I had decided at some point that I was going to kind of take one for the team without telling everybody, but a couple friends that I was going to stop praying to see what the results were, because I used to pray a lot. And different types of prayers, but being thankful for things or praying for other people, or I'd see an ambulance, and I'd pray for the people in it, even though I didn't know who they were. Whatever, I prayed a lot. It was just a relational thing between me and my idea of God. And I decided at some point, you know, I was going through a really difficult time in life, and I decided my life just kind of fell apart at a certain point. Let me see what happens if I stop praying. My friends were very worried for me, but I noticed the same thing over time, that good things happen at about the same clip and bad things happen at about the same clip as when I prayed and when I didn't. So this is a personal thing to me. I have no problem with people who pray or don't pray, but I understand what he's saying here. They see his observations the same as mine. Things seem to go along in very much the same way on a certain level anyhow. when I prayed and when I didn't pray, and he's saying the same thing.
50-50. Same as the four-leaf clover and the horseshoe, the wishing well and the rabbit's foot. Same as the mojo man. Same as the voodoo lady who tells you your fortune by squeezing the goat's testicles. It's all the same, 50-50. So just pick your superstition, sit back, make a wish, and enjoy yourself. And for those of you who look to the Bible for moral lessons and literary qualities, I might suggest a couple of other stories for you. You might want to look at The Three Little Pigs. That's a good one. Has a nice, happy ending. I'm sure you'll like that. Then there's Little Red Riding Hood, although it does have that X-rated part where the big bad wolf actually eats the grandmother, which I didn't care for.
Wait, did the wolf kill the grandmother? The big bad wolf killed the grandmother now? I don't remember that when I was a kid. Maybe my parents left that one out. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? Isn't that the song?
By the way. And finally, I've always drawn a great deal of moral comfort from Humpty Dumpty. The part I like the best, all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. That's because there is no Humpty Dumpty and there is no God. None, not one, no God, never was.
Wait, so there's like a self-defeating thing going on because a little earlier in it, and it's fine, you have comedic license. These aren't doctoral dissertations, but George is very intelligent and he's basing his comedy on what he considers to be true. But earlier he said it's rude to treat God, and he said it's no way to treat a friend praying on his day off, right? So you're giving him more work to do. And now he's saying that there is no God. And so that's kind of self-defeating in its own right. But that's how you could do this as a comedian. You could jump all over the place.
In fact, I'm gonna put it this way. If there is a God, may he strike this audience dead. See, nothing happened. Nothing happened. Everybody's okay. All right? Tell you what. I'll raise the stakes a little bit. If there is a God, may he strike me dead. See? Nothing happened. Oh, wait, got a little cramp in my leg. And my balls hurt. Plus, I'm blind. Oh, now I'm okay again. Must have been Joe Pesci, huh? God bless Joe Pesci. Thank you all very much. Joe bless you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Now he says, God bless Joe Pesci. He says that. All right, so there's one thing I wanted to point out that is self-defeating, and this is about the thought process. When George says, religion has taught people that there's a God, and this God, there's this place of torture and all these things that he developed out of that idea that religion has done that. Well, if you don't think there's a God, mankind then, essentially, your other choice, the primary choice, is that we evolved out of a primordial soup. And so we came from single-cell organisms, and then they evolved, and they adapted to the environment, and then eventually mankind came about. Well, then there wasn't religion at that time. If there's no God, then we just sort of happened somehow. But religion then, if there wasn't this idea of organized religion, and that's what George is basically saying, we're stuck with evolution. There were no biblical texts. There were no churches, temples, mosques, synagogues. There was nothing like that. So where did the belief in God come from? And that would have been, somebody would have had the first belief. Other people wouldn't have shared it, might not have even dawned on them. You look up at the sky, you see a sun, the stars, the moon changes. Was early man with not a developed brain yet trying to understand what is going on, you might just say there's something out there, some being, I don't get it. Religion didn't come till later. The texts didn't come until later, according to the evolutionary plan. Those who believe in creation believe God created Adam and Eve, and then eventually the law came through Moses when he went up Mount Sinai. And then, prophesied Messiah and a deliverer to Israel. And then the Christian faith branches off of that and says, Jesus did his thing. So that came much later according to the evolutionary plan. So when George says religion has caused people to believe in God, actually that's a self-defeating argument because religion didn't exist at one point. And yet a belief in God came about later. So this is almost a nature-nurture debate, where George's point is basically that people are nurtured into believing in God through the conduit of religion. But where did religion come from? And I'm not saying that this makes anything right or wrong. I'm saying as a process of thought, it's the standard creationist, evolutionist debate, where did all this stuff come from? Where did the earth, where did man, where did dogs, where did everything come from, if not from God? And then the evolutionist or the atheist says, well, then where did God come from? And so you have this infinite regression that, depending on where you stop on the regression, if you choose to stop on the regression and say, all right, well, I believe there's God. Well, that sets certain things in motion. If you say, I don't believe there's a God, that's your basic premise for the way you're going to process things in life. And each, to me, is equally valid. I wasn't at either place. If there was creation, I certainly wasn't there. The biblical texts have problems in my estimation, but nonetheless, George's arguments are self-defeating in many places. And it's not to assail him. I still think there's a lot of good points he made in here. And that is the nature of theological thought. There are things that are confusing. Why do good things happen to bad people? The title of another book by Rabbi somebody, Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People? And, so people are trying to answer this left and right in this world. We all wonder on different levels, especially when we're in pain. But anyway, there it is. I mean, George Carlin was a trip. There are just my thoughts on watching George. And it's kind of fun to be challenged to think and see the good points, the self-defeating points, and everything in between. So I'll see you on another video. Hope you enjoyed that. Have a great day and keep thinking theology.